Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bill Correll with my really good friend and co-host Lisa Sheehan, and we are bringing you Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. And each time we get together, we have empowering conversations with the whole intention of spreading empowerment throughout the listening world. We're glad that you tuned in today because I think we have a pretty special conversation to get into. And I'm really looking forward to it because both Lisa and I have spent some extensive time looking into a topic that I think is near and dear to both of us. Today, we're going to talk about the general concept of the law of attraction. And then we're also going to kind of get into a little historical, under the hood look at what a law of attraction has meant to many people and its rise and fall, and maybe dissect it a little bit and really point out the where the fulcrum for the leverage of being able to connect to the universe is. So with that said, Lisa, I'm going to start by reading a passage from an old masterwork. It actually came from the Master Key system.
Oh,
Would you bring into your life more power? Get the power consciousness. More health? Get the health consciousness. More happiness? Get the happiness consciousness. Live the spirit of these things until they become yours by right. You need not acquire this power because you already have it. That much gathers more is true on every plane of existence, and that loss leads to greater loss is equally true. Mind is created, and conditions, environment, and all experiences in life are the result of our habitual, our predominant mental attitude. The attitude of mind necessarily depends upon what we think. Therefore, the secret of all power, all achievement, all possession depends upon our method of thinking. This is true because we must be before we can do, and we can do only to the extent that we are. And what we are depends upon what we think. The world without is a reflection of the world within. The world without reflects the circumstances and the conditions of the consciousness within. What comes to us in the world without is what we already possess in the world within. All possession is based on consciousness. Harmony in the world within means the ability to control our thoughts and to determine for ourselves are any experiences to affect those. We are related to the world without by the objective mind. The brain is the organ of this mind. We are related to the world within by the subconscious mind and its sympathetic system of nerves that presides over all subjective sensations such as joy, fear, love, emotion, respiration, imagination, and the like. It is through the subconscious that we are connected with the universal mind and brought into relationship with the infinite constructive forces of the universe. How is that for summarizing the law of attraction in one paragraph?
that's quite a paragraph.
It is. What's really remarkable to me is that I call it the golden age of reasoning and imagination, probably like from 1850 to 1925. All these unbelievable minds that were at work trying to understand and answer the question of why are we here?
Right.
Who are we in the universe? So hearing that passage, what did you like the best about it?
I think how it covered almost every aspect of the law of attraction, like you were saying. My first reaction was the connectedness that we share with everything, and to get back to that basic philosophy, and to go back to your young beginner's mind you had as a child, and approaching everything from that aspect, how you are a part of everything and everything is a part of you, and how you feel is what is reflected out in the world. That kind of introspection and the ability to basically, as Wayne Dyer says, change your thoughts, change your mind. Um, change your life rather. Change your thoughts, change your life. That kind of approach to living.
Yeah, there's an interesting flow chart here of the power that we all possess already, and most of us walk around completely asleep and unconscious to having that power and having access to it.
Right.
So what living a long life is all about is gaining wisdom through the school of hard knocks and skin knees, so that at the end of our life we start to understand that mostly what's important is what's going on between our ears. And if there's something that's happening between our ears that is not really appealing to us, that's where having some muscle in terms of, listening to your thoughts and creating new thoughts, create the thoughts that you want, as opposed to the thoughts you're having. And in no case do you empower either a good thought or a bad thought to make, critical decisions going forward for right now. It's about thinking being separate than being related. Although it's not possible for those two things to be separate, and, but the pathways can be different. And what we're basically saying is that this world that's being created out here is in everything. When we look around, we see the things we see, and the other things that are there that we don't see are still there, but they don't exist for us.
Right.
So if you scan the room right now and close your eyes and had to write a list of everything that you just glanced around and saw, there are some things that would make it onto the list. And then for some people, that might be just a short list of things that they recall that they saw. But other people that are talented and trained and know how to observe a situation very quickly and pull out all the details, they'll have a long list.
Right.
So that's a muscle in terms of being related, on a conscious level or a consciousness level. And the whole idea is that what you spend your time thinking about, you will bring about. And what you bring about is the world that you get to live in. So I'm particularly impressed that this probably took, I have no idea where the original thoughts came from, but the story is it was published in a 23-week or 22-week uh, correspondence course that people got, through the mail,
Mm.
uh, in different questions and different pieces and the rest of it. But the whole idea of inviting people to a conversation of what if the quality of your life is completely related and 100% in lockstep in correspondence to the quality of your thinking. What's
Definitely.
possible?
Right. I mean, it's a subject that obviously has been brought up. At, the book Think and Grow Rich is quite old too, and you could reread that one every day and grasp something different from it to focus on as a good thought.
100%. Yeah, Napoleon Hill, there's a long list of all of these brilliant people who were engaged in a curious question with the rest of humanity,
Right.
and each of them kind of standing on the shoulders. Those were the times, when great breakthroughs in every area of living, the beginning of flight, all these competitions for physics prizes and all those sorts of things that brought us the Einsteins, and then brought us, thermodynamics, and that brought us brawn and rockets and missiles and the moon and outer space, and it brought us, electric cars. All those things started somewhere, and the thinking and the attraction of more ideas and more energy to whatever it was, and the opportunity to learn and discern. But it's kind of an interesting thing. We know from what psychologists tell us that we have roughly 80,000 thoughts a day. How they came up with that number, I'm just going to trust them for a second. So at some point you got to take something on face value. So let's say 80,000 is the number. What's generating all of those thoughts? What's the source of all of those thoughts? That can't be your conscious mind. Some of it is, some of it's your subconscious mind. Some of it is just being tuned in and getting random radio waves from who knows where.
Right. 80% are repetitive.
That's an interesting concept. Say some more about that.
I just because you have you create these synapses in your brain that rework the same thought patterns over and over again, and all you need is one one visual, one sort of sensational connection to recreate that thought again. It could be anything. It could be a bump in the road that you remember from yesterday, and all of a sudden that triggers a whole bunch of thoughts about nasty roads. It's just it's
Or your mother. You never
yeah,
know
yeah,
where it's
yeah. All
going
of a
to take
sudden, yeah, everything is related to that lovely pothole. But
you.
yeah, I just remember hearing like you get 60 to 80,000 thoughts, and 80% of them are repetitive.
They're like little subroutines, programs that get set up the first time and then just keep running automatically on
Right.
stimulation, right?
Which is why you should, like you were saying, pay attention to them because most of them are not positive or beneficial. So they lead you down I could be the queen of negative thoughts. So I know that road really well. And which is why people focus on things like talking to or listening to Abraham Hicks, brilliant sort of law of attraction. They wrote another book called that too. So there's such a power in changing your thinking to be general and positive so that it reflects out and then comes back to you. And even like when you were talking about all the science too, it's like those scientists, as brilliant as they were, as the further out they went, the more they realized how the power lies within. All of them did. Einstein, every single one of them got back to what's inside of your imagination is one of your greatest powers. That sort of thing. So to use it instead of keeping rehashing those same horrible thoughts, be creative, be imaginative.
Right. So then you've got all of the other what I call intervention techniques, right?
Yep.
So like the whole idea of a thought that you have repetitively gives you the life you're actually living.
Right.
And if you're not empowered by the thought you're having, replace it, have a new thought. And so the whole idea of affirmations, where you sit down and you write something positive that you want in your life, you're getting that consciousness. We talked about health, happiness, wealth, all these things that you can focus your energies and attention on and create that kind of thinking. And that kind of thinking at the conscious level, being mindful, being aware, being awake, being responsible, to set your life up for success, tells your subconscious what to spend its time replicating. You spend a lot of time hitting a pothole and regretting it for the next 45 minutes to an hour and reliving it over and over for a few days. It's going to take a minute or two to move that out into a deeper in the list of programs that get run, right?
Right.
But it's an interesting thing that it's the nature of conversation and non substance experience. So, for instance, we carry a vessel, to have our coffee or our water in. Okay, you couldn't really drink a quart of water without having it in something, right? So what we spend our time doing is designing efficient tools to hold the water. And that's really what the conscious thinking process is all about our entire life. We're not only building capacities, we're building efficacy. We're building, the ability to do it well and to be able to do it in less time with more efficiency, more accurate reasoning and going through the motor steps to get to a logical conclusion until all of a sudden it just seems intuitive. The things that we would have to study in 4 or 5 steps when we were younger and just beginning, like riding a bicycle or rhythmic breathing in swimming or balance, those things that we've talked about many times.
Right.
Or how about a foreign language? Till all of a sudden you're dreaming in that language,
Right.
you know? So in terms of thinking about um, the predominant thoughts, and the more you can have those predominant thoughts, it's just a funny relationship with the universe, that your subconscious is able to connect out there with all of that energy. And some people theorize that it has to do with energy wavelengths, that where we're dwelling in our thinking is actually connecting us with and resonating with that energy level somewhere else, and that's what we end up getting most of our feedback from, and most of our feeding from, if you will.
Well, that's, the frequencies of any thought patterns too have, they can be measured, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, like sadness or grief, or have a denser energy or slower energy. Happiness and joy are at the upper end of the scale, so actually can be measured. So you can everything is energy. If you look at it that way, then when you get caught up in a positive energy, you can almost feel it. You get caught up in a negative energy. I remember listening to somebody. Oh, well, I'm trying to think of. I'll think of who it was, but walking into a room and talking about, like, when you're sitting in a room and somebody walks in and you could tell that the energy in the room changed. If it's a person that's angry or in a bad mood somehow, and all of a sudden the whole room gets sunken into that feeling. But the other way to look at it is then to say, then that means you drop down into that lower energy too. So you have the ability and almost sometimes the responsibility to stay up at a higher level of energy, a more positive level of energy, so that you don't fall into that. You have that capability too. Everybody does,
Yes.
and I don't think people are aware of that. So you get drawn into a negative energy, or you can get drawn into a positive energy, but you have the ability to go between the two at on your own whim, your own desire.
Yes. Yeah. So what's really interesting about the whole idea is having um, a world without that is based on consciousness allows you to decide whether or not to receive those particular
Hmm.
frequencies at a thoughtful level or reject them.
Right.
So, in many cases, you walk into a situation where you're really not feeling all that comfortable, and you look around, it doesn't look like anybody else is. Instead of buying into it and looking for the source of the problem, what you can do is you can say, okay, that's cool. What's up with that?
Right.
Let's pay attention here. What is going on around here? Let's see if we can play with this a little bit. Let's see if we can
Hmm.
have a little fun with it. You ever notice that that's kind of how things shift quickly from that feeling of downness? Someone generates a different level of energy and vibe, and now
Right.
all of a sudden it kind of breaks the silence and everybody laughs at the same time. Maybe a nervous laugh at first, but then it kind of, somebody says a funny comment, and then now the whole room is back to, chattering with each other again.
Right. People experience it every day, like just being nice to somebody, in a checkout line, how it changes the whole mood of the area, even the whole store sometimes. But and you probably don't even notice it. You give a smile, or you don't get mad, or you pay for the person in front of you, or that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden, or you just crack a joke, maybe anything that to lighten the mood, and then but people do it all the time. They just don't realize how they've changed the energy of their surrounding area.
It's a remarkable thing to get into that thinking space. And I've been in several different year-long training programs that we're all about playing with that. We're all about disappearing clouds or changing a rainy day into a sunny day.
Right.
So can you imagine the audacity of sitting there and I'm going to disappear that cloud, and it doesn't work at first. It's kind of like when you press the return button on your computer and nothing happens, but you have to stay there and you have to keep looking at your screen, and then something happens and a little circular thing comes up, and oh yeah, so I know that there's something going on over there. Well, it's kind of the same thing. I would invite all of you, the next time you're sitting out in the park or just out in your backyard, just focus your energy and attention on a very small cloud And then decide that that little cloud needs to be freed, and allow that energy to go back into the universe in a different form, and then watch what happens and where it recreates itself somewhere else in your field of view. It's kind of an interesting thing to do.
I do that all the time, but I have this. I take on the accepting feeling of whether that cloud's there or not. It has no bearing on how I am, and because I have, it's my own philosophy, but because I have that philosophy, then the cloud goes away if I don't want it there.
Well, and the other thing is that you can appreciate it out of existence too. I
Yes.
mean, your intention and the philosophical way that you consciously guide your own thinking when you can, because we're all subject to, like we said before, some sort of visual or sensual, tactile response, sort of triggering of something happening.
Right.
And then at a very young and low level and an untrained level, the trigger is going to it's going to generate some sort of an emotional response that's not identified, and there'll be an immediate action, and then there'll be a consequence for that action, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. However, if you take a moment and examine and break down that emotional step, there's often time to interrupt before you act, from the triggering to the having the emotional reaction, to the action where there's no thinking going into it. And you have to go back and clean up messes frequently in your life. There's this thing that you can do called, when I have this thought pattern, I'm going to introduce this other thought pattern. And again, that's an affirmation. This is you bringing something into your life. You want, more health, get the health consciousness. You want more happiness, get the happiness consciousness. If you build it, it will come.
I was just watching. He's a not law of attraction. He's a present mind kind of expert, Leonard Jacobson, and he was talking just like to simply go. If you notice yourself judging, you just go judging and stop it.
I can't remember which comedian was really good at that. Might have been Joan Rivers or somebody of that ilk, but you know, but really, I mean, life is all about. Speaking of Joan Rivers, can we talk?
Right.
There is no is out there, and I love that be, do, have relationship to things. It's kind of a mishmash, and they don't always happen in exactly the same way. It's more like a stew, where if you have to be something before you can do it, and then you have to do it before you can have it. So that gets translated into act as if, fake it till you make it, be the person you dream to be, and then live into that. A lot of different philosophical ways to language the same thing, where manifestation is at a very high level of practice. People who are frequent manifestors manifest emotion first, manifest physical world second. And it's unbelievable, how there are just people that can cause something to happen. And there's games you can play, like the game that we used to play when we were kids is what's the color of the fifth car from now? It starts out as a guessing game, but I'm going to tell you, after a 2 or 3 hour trip, it was really kind of uncanny how a couple out of the 8 of us that were playing the game, riding around the car,
Right.
got to be really good at predicting the color of the sixth car or the 12th car. How could that be explained?
Right.
So this is one of those things in life that isn't terribly useful. It's very powerful. But to pull it out of your utility belt like Batman and put it to use, it takes a little bit of, again, responsible effort, some muscle building in terms of the practice. But the cloud is one thing. How about there's always, starting off with an affirmation, there's always a parking space near the door.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorites.
I love it too. Now, how many times out of 100 will you actually find a parking space that's within, a few spaces of the door to the building you're going into.
Right. My friends and I call it princess parking.
Princess, we also, I've got a friend who always called it parking karma, you know.
Yep.
So, but see, these are some little things that you can do that are also really great distraction from those thought distortions that kind of get in
Right.
your way, that drag you down. And if you don't have a friend around, or a friend to phone and get you out of a momentary funk, a game like that is a good interruption. Making a choice.
There's, yeah, or distraction, like we talked about last week, even, a simple distraction of any kind, or bringing your five senses back into it again. Touch something, taste something, smell something.
Slap your hands together, sing a
Yep.
song,
Yeah, anything.
mess your hair up.
Right. Change the thought pattern. And I was on a conference, well, a workshop with Sonia Choquette, and she was talking about the the mind and the ego, actually, and how we need to put it in perspective. And her idea is to treat it like your favorite dog, create a breed that you like and name it, but that you should train it like you would train a dog. It doesn't rule your life, because you would never let a dog rule your life. It should be like your personality, and then you train it to do what you want, which I thought was a great little exercise, because you that gets your ego out of the way so that your subconscious can have more fun.
And did you do it?
I have not yet, because I can't think of the breed.
That's kind of funny.
I name everything, so you think it would be easy for me, but I haven't had it hasn't come to me yet.
Yeah,
I'm very picky about that too.
absolutely. But I like the idea, to that's not
Does
anthropomorphizing.
something come to mind to you instantly for you?
Yeah.
Oh, a dog, a breed, and a name?
Oh yeah, for me, I'm going to tell you what, it's probably going to be an Irish setter.
Oh my God, I haven't heard. Yeah.
Irish setters are probably among the most beautiful stupid dogs in the entire world.
Have you seen any lately?
I have not.
I know, because my friend had when we were growing up, and I saw her recently, and I said I have not seen an Irish setter in forever.
They're a tough dog, to have, in a normal house size, because they're so big
Right.
and they shed. I mean, they have very long hair. They're absolutely gorgeous and beautiful and all the rest of that. And my dad had one, whose name was Casey, and he
Mhm.
lived down on Union Street in Norwich, probably about, I don't know, a block and a half from, from the Norwich Cathedral, and another block and a half from the police station down at the bottom of the street. And he was constantly going, to the pound, bailing Casey out, because Casey was, just this big, strong, stupid dog that would
Yeah.
run away, like, every time it got the chance. So, but why would I be a setter? Because of the challenge of training it. I mean, why
Yep.
be a Cocker Spaniel, which those dogs are, or a Border Collie or something of that nature, that all they want to do is make you happy, right?
Yeah. That would
I,
be cool.
I like that. And there's lots of really cool songs that can go along with it. My daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren brought their dog, to our home this summer for 5 or 6 weeks while they were here. And Zelda was this beautiful, wonderful trained dog that weighs about 70 pounds, and she just would not stay off my lap. Or in my chair. There was just something about, I don't know if it was how I smelled or the
Right.
energy or whatever, but she just decided she was always going to be around me. And so we had this little saying, of she's a happy dog, she's a happy dog, she's a happy dog. And she was, man. Whenever she was in the room, those eyes would get big and bright and just look at us, and the tail would be wagging like crazy, and
Yeah.
back end going back and forth. And then we say sit, and she would immediately sit. Unbelievable. So yeah, the Irish setter, once you win the battle of the wills and you actually get its attention enough time to teach it how to do behaviors, very rewarding.
And thus it could be with you and your ego too. Right?
Yeah, I probably would go with, I would steal a very famous name of an Irish setter, Big Red.
There you go.
Did you ever, you remember that movie when you were a kid?
No, I don't. I mean, it sounds familiar now that you say it, but I don't. It's not a. I don't think I ever watched it. Or no.
So here we are, and then you can play with that whole metaphor. And if it weren't a dog, what animal would you take your thought and turn it into that type of a being?
Yeah, as long as it's trainable. You don't want to go wild.
So, are you in a position where you can give us a corny report this week?
Which what?
Corny report.
Oh, he's so big.
Has he grown a lot in the last week?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I guess they kind of like there's two leaves and then a new leaf comes up in the middle.
Yep.
So the new leaf, that was just a baby last week, and now I don't know what they do after that, but I mean, he's this tall, he's a foot tall.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the center leaf is gaining. So I don't know. I think they drop off. The bottom leaves drop off eventually, and stronger leaves take their place. But we'll see.
So, are you currently in the course of turning your thought into a dog, or your idea into a dog and training it?
That actually is that course. Yes, it's current, and it's connecting with your spirit guides is actually what the course is, and the co-presenter is Mike Dooley. I don't know if you know him, but he offers these wonderful snippets called Notes from the Universe.
Yes.
You answer a couple little questions and you get these brilliant little blurbs I think it's every day, or every other day. And they're uplifting and very much, they're well written too.
Yeah.
Anybody can sign up for them. So Notes from the Universe, I would recommend that with Mike Dooley.
It sounds like a service that I subscribed to back in the 90s, where I would on America Online. There was
maybe, I don't know. I forget when he started. He started like with T-shirts, like something simple, and then it went crazy. And then he'd been writing these things forever, never realizing it could turn into like a lucrative business.
What these were these were bedtime contemplations. These were little snippets, as you're mentioning, maybe a little bit different, but they were intended to allow your mind to quiet down. It would be a moment of thoughtfulness. And in some cases, it would be dwelling on your favorite thing to be thankful from today. Because in a life of a person who's got the happiness consciousness and the wealth and the health and all the rest of that consciousness, happy thoughts and happy experiences should be the predominant experience of life.
Right.
And if it's something other than that, the thought was, you may just be fooling yourself. Now, being happy isn't something that people should aspire to. The thought was, we all started being happy, and
Right.
allowing the other thoughts to distract us from that way of being and that birthright. And the thing I liked about Hanel's first opening couple of sentences is, this isn't something that you have to go and get. You already possess it. You have gold that is buried in your basement. You have to first go look for it. You have to have the intention of finding it. And if you're really searching for it from the standpoint of the exploration, like a quest of mastery, then the gold is limitless. And the gold has absolutely no chance of ever running out in your lifetime. So those kinds of thoughts that essentially, instead of getting a cookie, you get a cookie factory.
Right.
From now on, right?
Can I share one of my favorite notes from the universe?
I hope you will.
It gives you an idea of what they're like, and it always, of course, includes your name once you sign up. There's a name for the magic, Lisa, which transforms lives, connects dots, moves mountains, and orchestrates coincidences that shock and astound. Imagination. And there's a name for all that stops you in your tracks, stirs fear, spins wheels, and leaves you wondering, hey, what's up with that? Imagination. Careful where you point that thing. The universe.
That's my kind of contemplation. I love it.
Right?
From the good
So,
book of
yeah.
Hey, What's Up with That?
Right, exactly. And like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Henry
Like
Ford. Yeah. And he
philosophy.
probably stole it from Aristotle or,
Right.
probably an old,
Exactly.
it's all old dead guys. What can I say, Unless you're quoting, Maria or Teresa or one of the famous saints. Now, I was raised Catholic. I don't know about you, but
Yep.
I was an altar boy from the time I was 7.5, right after my first communion, as a matter of fact. And I did that for about 4 years. And I was always amazed and astounded, by the quotes in the catechism of
Hmm.
all of these saints. And even in those days, I mean, we're talking early 1960s, and I'd never heard of Mother Teresa. But as I grew up later on in life, I recognized many of the quotes that I heard and saw attributed to her in books and then also on the internet. Well, that's what, I used to listen to that in sermons on Sunday mornings.
Right.
So Father Miller was tapped into Mother Teresa somehow. I wonder if they read the same books.
Well, that's a good priest then.
Absolutely.
More modern version.
Well, he was an interesting guy. Father Miller was he was an Irish Catholic, real thick Irish
Oh,
Boston accent. Yes, and you know, uh, a green was green, yellow was yellow, and red was red, right? And quite frankly, the things that were most refreshing were his ability to stand in a conversation and never change his point of view.
hmm.
And that was probably the way most people were trained, because I'm guessing he was born in the late 20s to early 30s.
Right.
And he just he had to be the embodiment of the Catholic Church in any conversation that he was in. So we're talking about getting a consciousness. And so the quotes would always be, well, our Lord tells us, and the Pope tells us, and Pope Pius, whatever, the 12th, or the quotes would just come out of nowhere. Now he could have been making them up. I mean, that's always a possibility, because there was no way to fact check a conversation back in
No.
1963.
No.
But we're talking about segueing and synapses firing and the thoughts coming in, and it's remarkable how the predominant conscious thought can actually cover all the other, the subroutine thoughts that are all firing and going on in the background, especially while you're talking. Have you ever noticed that? It's fairly difficult to hold two ideas at the same time.
Well, I think because I remember reading recently that people love to say they multitask, and while you can consider like breathing, of course you can breathe and do everything, things like that, like things that have become, you don't have to consciously be aware that you're doing them anymore. But otherwise, there's really no such thing as multitasking, which one person has said. You can only do a singular thing. You might think you're multitasking, but
Yes. Yeah. So Einstein had his own. The quote that I like that he had to say was, "In the universe, Only one thing can occupy a space at a time,
Right.
and that includes a thought. A thought is a thing.
Right.
So the neat part of it is another, kind of a mind picture is how many pieces of thread can you put through the eye of a needle? And if you consider um, what science has taught us, not only can only one thing occupy a space at a time, it almost turns out that the best way to do something is to begin a task and complete that whole unit before starting the next unit. The whole.
Right. And it's easily applicable during the day. I mean, I know I have to do that at work. It's on the computer all the time, but it's a tedious and exact. So you have to do one at a time. Otherwise you lose them all.
So what I wonder is, I've been dwelling a lot in all of these repetitive things that are required in order to get to a level of mastery. Like, for instance, when we were talking about being an athlete last week, how many thousand push-ups, jumping jacks, sit-ups, squat thrusts, and that sort of thing does it take until your body is resilient enough to recover quickly if you're like Ken and you fall off a bike?
Right.
And so the same thing is, it's like, it's a new way to relate to children, going to school and failing at their homework. Mastering the mundane. There is absolutely nothing that's exciting about doing homework unless you happen to be one of those really fortunate kids that just loves to do homework, right? I know a few of them. It wasn't me.
And there's a reward for doing, for me, the reward was better grades. And
Yes. And the whole idea of memorization, such a difficult conversation and a concept for the young children to grasp.
right,
Memorizing first, sounds, then letters, then colors, then images of what is this? It's a bear. What is this? It's a dog. Um, I missed that.
right. Like, I was just trying to think of, like, at what point is that, is that really a good way to teach? It has to be at the beginning, right? Or, memorizing things is part of life. So, but, our basic school structure, is that the way that people should be forced to learn? Because I depended on good grades, and I, which actually makes you dependent on people's reactions, you know,
Yes.
getting that feedback, getting that. So
Yeah. The judging and the whole reality of somebody else looking at your work, and they have a teacher's key from the back of the book.
right, but I mean that we digress.
Well, the main thing is to relate to the law of attraction, because there is a mundane set of practices that require that you do certain things periodically in order to get muscle with them.
Right,
And one of them that I think is really, it's made a huge difference in my life. That is taking no more than 5 minutes, a couple, three times a day, or more than that if I think of it, of just quieting my mind and meditating. And I will do it several different ways. I will contemplate my grandchildren. I will visualize one of their smiles, and I will just sit there and I will look at all the detail of the grin and the way the eyes are and the crinkling, at the corner of the eyes, and how their face changes color and gets a little bit deeper red around the cheeks. And so I'll do that quietly for 4 or 5 minutes. And then the other one that I do, which I think most people can more readily identify with, is just to concentrate on breathing.
right,
The whole experience of breathing in, and where do you feel that in your body, and just that whole awareness and mindfulness of a simple little act. And then another thing that I like to do is to do 1 minute uh, mindfulness breathing routines. And I do the first one where I just quiet myself, and at the end of the minute, I check on my watch and I find out how many beats per minute, my heart is beating.
Right.
And then I make a decision. I will make it beat 3 beats less in the next minute that I measure. And I'll be darned. At some points I can do it, like I can reduce the number by 10 and it'll work. And then there's other days I don't really care how many times I try, ain't happening. There's something going on. It might have been the martini I had last night or 2 cups of coffee this morning or whatever. But it's still a fun game to play. It puts my attention on something other than what's going on out in the world that's not bringing me a whole lot of pleasure and hope, if you will.
Right. And one of the basic breathings that techniques that really works is to inhale to a count, hold for, like, let's say 4, but exhale at least one number longer. So if you inhale it for a count of 4, then make sure you exhale to the count of 5 and get rid of it. Exhale as deeply as you can, and
Yeah,
then
those are stress reduction techniques,
right,
which are very powerful, and they actually reduce the cortisol in your body. I
right,
found, I found that out from Ken's mentor.
right, and yeah, because I mean, you carry your breath with you, so it's an easy way to to focus on something else. It's always, like, it's always with you. So there's the one of the mindfulness ones is alternate nostril breathing, which is very cool. Um, and develops both sides, the hemispheres of the brain separately, so it kind of centers you again.
We got to spend some time together, you know that? Because that is fascinating. Say some more about it.
Well, it's kind of easy too. So you take your 3 fingers, and one's basically kind of on your, you got your thumb and your ring finger on either side of your nose, and
Sure.
your middle finger on almost like your third eye, so to speak. And so you inhale for a count, and then switch nostrils and exhale, and then inhale from that same nostril.
So you're closing the nostril off down at the bottom?
At the yeah, wherever you can close it
Fair enough.
comfortably. So you inhale, and then you close it off, and you exhale on the other side, and then you inhale from that same side and switch. But I mean, it's a great refocusing, like we were talking about. Just
Sure. Sure. Other practices that can lead you to having a more organized consciousness. Like, for instance, if you're interested in love, then you need to get the love consciousness. And how do you focus on love, as a thing? Well, you have to focus on something that allows you to experience love, right? And when you're capable of doing that very quickly, all the power of these choices, as Hanel said, in 1916 or whenever he said it first, when you can control your thinking, then the world comes to you, through your subconscious. The universe is there all the time, and in 100% of the cases, you have to be in a position to receive. You have to be able to hear, listen, and receive. And I wonder how many people listening to this podcast today can relate to that at any level at all. I'll bet you there are a bunch of people that can, but I think there's probably an equal number or maybe even greater that are going, "What you talking about, Bill?"
well, receiving, is, I think, in our era, it's not always something that people can do easily. Then the other practice then is to give. So if you can't understand why somebody's not loving towards you, then you become that love towards that person, or whatever emotion that you think that, if somebody's not being patient with you, then you give that person as much patience as you can, and it comes back to you, which is the law of attraction in simple practice.
Yeah, once it's received in both directions, then it's what I like to call a co-creation.
Mm-hmm.
And a co-creation is as good as it gets. And then if
Exactly.
it's a large group that are co-creating, it's it's almost like a spiritual experience, because I guess it actually is a spiritual experience.
Right. I just thought of my church when you said that, because
Yeah,
I belong to Unity, and co-creating is one of our most popular words that we use.
yeah, yeah. The whole notion of the universe without being created in inside first. And I know I've been impressed several times in my life reading about Buddhists who were focusing on some world event, um, and utilizing the strength of that old koan, the flapping of a butterfly's wings in this hemisphere can create the hurricane in that hemisphere, or something of that nature.
Mhm.
And so it just seemed really audacious to me that they were meditating and praying for a particular world event in several different instances, but most of them had to do with world healing. We would, like, everybody that's ever had the microphone for a minute and asked what they want most in the world, they would say, I want world peace. And what would that look like? Wouldn't that be something like, let me see, what do we got? 8 billion people on the planet. The ones that are awake, probably about 3.5, 4 billion at any given time.
Right.
That would kind of look like, maybe 2 billion conversations that worked, all going on at the same time.
And there's a ton of people that have done the prayer practices where inviting thousands, hundreds or thousands of people to pray at the exact same time, and gone to war torn places where, while they're praying, peace breaks out all over the place, as they say.
Yeah,
Just the power of prayer, and especially when it's everybody at the same time, a bunch of people at the same time. And they've done, scientific experiments with that too, where everybody has a positive thought of prayer at the same time all over the world, and how it actually, they can measure how it's affected the planet energetically.
and if you think about it at a fundamental level, if the law of attraction is talking about the world outside being created in the world inside first, and everyone introduces a thought process, pattern, idea, a dog that they're going to train and name and all that sort of thing. And if they were all to do that at the same time, how much disagreement could there be? How much, I mean, there might be a fashion show in terms of who had the best looking, prayer, or because we always do that, but
I could see meeting in circles, and just everybody having to identify their dog and their dog's name.
yeah,
I mean, just how fun that would be. Just icebreaker, and
I
everything
love it.
else kind of falls away.
So let me just kind of ask you, I've had many experiences in my life where I thought something, I intended it, and then it actually happened many times, and from an early age. And the whole idea of being tuned in to listening to what's going on in other people's lives around the country, for example. Somebody I haven't talked to for, I don't know, 6 months or a year, and the phone rings and I say, hey, Ed, how you doing? What?
Right. And I think that happens to people. Well, again, the people aren't paying attention, aren't aware enough to, they don't see that as a little miracle, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it's so much fun when you are aware of them, because those little synchronicities or happenstances or miracles are so much fun to receive and play with, and to tell other people about.
Well, I had an occurrence probably, 3 weeks ago, and I just reached out to a friend that I hadn't talked to. I see posts from on Facebook quite a bit, but um, I just sent a text and I said, "Are you okay?" And about 2 minutes later, I got a text back, and the answer to the text was, "How did you know
Right.
I'm in trouble?"
Awesome.
I can't tell you how I know. I just answered her by saying I'm a pretty good listener, I guess,
Right.
And, and so that, kind of led us into a whole new interaction and, getting together and having lunch and all that sort of thing. And but it started off with me just kind of getting a sense and a vibe, out of all the people I know. Like,
Right.
I didn't send anybody else a text saying, "Are you okay?"
Reply all.
So explain this to me if you can.
And I had, the same kind of thing. It's a friend that I haven't seen in a while, and I just said, when are you going to be in town again? Because I'd love to see you. And he said, I'm going to be in town tomorrow. Let's have dinner.
Yes.
That kind of thing, which is fun. But there's also been some manifestations that I have no idea what they were supposed to tell me. To this day, I kept um, I had adored this background of a workshop I was attending online, and it was this very pretty drawing of a man and a woman in an embrace. And I said, I wonder if that's a real thing. And then I randomly went to a store, and I saw a poster of this same image, and I went, oh, it's real, but I still don't know. So I bought the poster, but I don't know who it is. Next day I go to IKEA, and there's a whole display of this artist's work, and now I know the name of the artist, and I see the image that I love again. I go home from the store and I open up my sister's computer, and there's that image on her screen. And I'm going, why is this happening? What, it's following me everywhere. And it was actually the Google drawing of the day, because it was would have been the artist's 100th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And it was like, I mean, I have the image on several things now, and it's called The Kiss. And it's by his name is Klimt. He's a Swedish artist. But I still don't, I'm intrigued by what that is supposed to bring to me or mean to me,
Yeah. So if we can kind of wrap this up, we as we usually do, have some pretty, shall we say, esoteric academic conversations from time to time. Ones that are great for bending your mind a little bit and creating a different thought process. But let's just see if we can like draw a comparison between the teachings of the Master Key System 100 years ago. And we have done very little. I mean, if we were going into Central Park right now, we stuck our big toe into Central Park with what I read this morning. It's a lifetime of study here that's possible.
Right.
But let's see if we can just draw a kind of a quick map between this philosophy and the utility of it, okay? So once you've decided that the mind is created and the conditions, environment, and all experiences in life are the result of our habitual and our predominant mental attitude, we can then say with certainty, I say, that the attitude of the mind is necessarily dependent upon what we think. Therefore, the secret of all power, all achievement, and all possession depends upon our method of thinking. And this is true because we must be before we can do, and we can only do to the extent that we are. And what we are depends on what we think. So, in the practical world, this has everything to do with practices like goal setting and vision boards. And this is where you take one of those ideas, and a vision board is creating a puppy in a visual. And it allows you to do two things. It allows you to go back and re-experience and to trigger those positive thoughts
Right.
When you look at this creation and work of art and the things that are there, and it also allows you to update it as time goes on. If there's something that more clearly speaks to an intention and a goal, and you can put that in your vision board. Goals do the same thing. They're handwritten. A lot of people do them over and over every day, or at least once a week. I really think that any thought or intention that is truly coming from a desire or a want that's good for you and good for everybody else, you know, I think, the constant review of that allows you to be that person that is the person receiving whatever the goal delivers. And my evidence for that is not the Harvard study or anything else of that nature. It's just that there were some things along the way that my thought distortions would tell me I can never have that. I'll never do that. That's not something, that's for me, or those kinds of things. And then you fill in the blank. So I got audacious, especially back in the 1990s when I was building my business up in the first place. I sat down and I said, within the next 2 years, I'm going to go on 3 cruises. And I'd never been on a cruise in my entire life.
Right.
I didn't have any money to go on a cruise. Okay, before that, I will own a a Mercedes Roadster, a 560 SL. Okay, whatever it is. These were the physical toys that go along with the sense of accomplishment and achievement that every small business owner wants to have along the way. I think these days is a Porsche Cayenne, for most people, but back then, these are the ones that come after you've got your mortgage paid and the kids' education fund started and all those sort of things in a small business. And what I would do is I would set a time frame, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and the silly part of it was, doggone it, if they didn't all just kind of get up and be satisfied within the first 6 months to a year.
They all came true. I know.
Yeah, it was like a point and shoot sort of thing. So
Yep.
yeah, the round table, mastermind groups that I did 12, 15 years ago with groups of people, use the same technique with them.
Right.
Let's get your project described. Let's first of all sit down and decide what's most important to you in life. And then let's decide what that would look like once it's manifested and you can go out and you can touch it and you can count it and smell it and you can lie in it, or whatever it is, right? And turns out it's duplicatable. It's replicatable. That whole ability to get people to pay attention and get a consciousness about something that's very important to them. And again, I believe that it has to be based in, it can't be based in getting even or vengeance or anything of that
Oh,
nature.
yeah.
But if it's good for you and it's good for everyone else, by golly, just paying attention to it every day, you're,
But like you experienced too, it's not you don't know necessarily how it's going to happen, and you have to let that part go
yes.
and just focus on the why. Why you desire that certain outcome.
Yeah, the other neat thing to do is to actually put yourself in that experience.
Right.
It's not the thing, it's the how you feel while you're in the thing, or while you have the thing, or while you be the thing, right?
Right.
The stronger that identification is, and the more you can actually feel that throughout your body and that state of mind that you're in, I don't know. I do think that the energy places things in your life that you ask for.
Right. Exactly.
Anyhow, we've had another great conversation. I really truly love our one-on-ones, and as much as I love the group ones as well, because we're all very interesting people with interesting thoughts.
Right.
So, anything else to kind of wrap it up today?
I'll just leave you with Mike Dooley's registered quote, which is thoughts become things, choose the good ones.
I like that. I like that. I heard it a little bit different, from Werner Erhard.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's versions of it, Yeah, go ahead. What's his version?
I will give you the two things that I actually heard and watched on a recording. He said, in the universe, there are only two things, and one is nothing, and the other is bullshit. And then he said, since it's all bullshit, choose the bullshit that empowers you.
Right. Choose the bullshit you like.
Exactly. If you're gonna have it, you might as well be in love with the bullshit you get, right? Now that's a technical term.
Yeah, right.
Probably won't be hearing that one at church very often, unless there's a really good use for the technical term. Anyhow, well, thank you again, my friend Lisa, and thank you all for giving us a listen today. And please let us know what you think and how things are going for you. If there's a topic you'd like us to bat around for a little while, we'd love to do it. But in the meantime, keep lighting the candle in a world that works in your own life. Bye-bye, y'all.
This is Eric Lopkin from the Exvadio Podcast Network. And if you enjoyed this exploration of the law of attraction, join us for part 2 on the Success Showcase, where Chip Januszewski and I continue the exploration and go more into what the law of attraction can do for you. You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.